I never thought I'd be the guy writing this kind of story. Honestly, I always figured I was pretty solid. Stable life, decent job, a wife I thought I knew inside out. Jessica and I had been together for about 8 years. We married young, built a decent life in a small suburb, and I thought we had a good thing going. Or at least I did. Until the cracks started showing, and then everything just unraveled faster than I could keep up. At first, it was little things. Jessica was acting a little distant, snapping at me more often than usual, staying late at what she called girls' nights. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she was hiding her phone a lot more, locking it when she wasn't around, and deleting texts like her life depended on it. I told myself maybe she was just stressed, or she was trying to be more private because she thought I was getting paranoid. But I knew deep down that something was off. Then the suspicious stuff started piling up. Her phone bills suddenly skyrocketed with calls at weird hours, and she became very secretive about her schedule. She'd lie about a meeting and I'd find her emails with strange attachments from industry contacts I didn't recognize. She always had an excuse: it's just work stuff, or my boss is pushing me hard, or it's just some networking thing. But the tone in her voice, her evasiveness when I'd ask questions, that was new. And honestly, it stung. My gut was telling me something was wrong and I couldn't ignore it anymore. One night I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. When I walked in, I saw her laptop open on the kitchen table. I noticed a series of messages from a guy named Mike, a name I'd never heard her mention before. The messages weren't just casual, they were flirtatious, filled with innuendos and talking about meeting after hours at some hotel downtown. I recognized the style of the messages immediately. They weren't just work emails, they were something else. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. Jessica was cheating on me, and somehow she was doing it with her biggest business competitor, a guy I'd always considered a ruthless bastard, but apparently he was also her secret lover. I stared at the screen, feeling like the ground was about to give out beneath me. All those little signs, the late nights, the secretive texts, it all made sense now. That's when I realized Jessica wasn't just cheating on me emotionally. She was playing a dangerous game of corporate espionage, and I'd been blind to it. She told me she was just networking, but the truth was far darker. She was sleeping with the enemy, helping him get insider info, probably sharing company secrets, all while pretending everything was fine. It was a betrayal on so many levels I couldn't even process it all at once. I stood there, trembling, trying to breathe, trying to figure out what my next move was. My head was racing. Do I confront her? Do I call the police? Do I just walk away and pretend I never saw this? The pain was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, angry, but more than anything, I felt stupid for not seeing it earlier. How did I miss all the signs? How did I let her lie to my face for so long? And the worst part, what the hell do I do now? So there I was, staring at her laptop, heart pounding, feeling like I'd just been hit by a truck. My mind raced, trying to process everything I'd just uncovered. Jessica had always been a bit of a bitch when things didn't go her way, but I never thought she'd be capable of something so cold and calculated. To be honest, part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew better. I needed a plan. I needed to see just how deep this rabbit hole went before I made any moves. I stayed quiet for a few days after that. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to just go on with my life and hope it was all a horrible mistake. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that I'd lost control of everything. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Jessica had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. She was sneaking around behind my back, not just with some guy, but with her biggest industry competitor. That was a whole other level of betrayal. I mean, she was basically helping him sabotage my company, my reputation, everything I'd worked so hard for. One night, I finally decided I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat her down, told her I knew about the affair, about the emails, the secret meetings. Her face twisted into this annoyed, bitchy look, like I was bothering her. She rolled her eyes, told me I was crazy, that I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. She called me insecure, said I was just jealous because her career was taking off, and that I was just overreacting. She lied with such ease it made me feel sick. Her words, her smirk, all of it made me realize just how much I'd been played. Her reaction only made me angrier. She acted like I was the problem, as if I was the one betraying her by even questioning her loyalty. But I knew the truth. Jessica had been cheating on me, not just with some guy, but with someone who was actively damaging my business. The thought that she'd do that to me, to us, to what we built, it was unbearable. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again, only this time the punch was in my chest and I was gasping for air. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to her lies, her dismissiveness, her bitchy attitude when I pressed her. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't trust her anymore. All the love I'd felt for her, all the good times we'd shared, it was fading fast, replaced by this bitter sense of betrayal. I started realizing that if I didn't do something, I'd just be letting her get away with it, and that would make me an idiot. No, I needed to take control. I needed to figure out exactly what her game was, how far she'd gone, who else might be involved, and what her endgame was. In the days that followed, I started gathering evidence. I installed a keylogger on her phone, checked her emails more closely, and even hired a private investigator just to see if she was meeting anyone else. It was a dirty thing to do, but honestly, I was desperate. I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. And sure enough, the pie came back with more than I'd hoped, more emails, more secret meetings, and even some photos of her in a hotel room with Mike. I felt sick, but also strangely relieved. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. It was clear to me now. Jessica had been lying, cheating, and secretly working with her biggest business rival. They built a little network of lies, deception, and betrayal. I realized that I was just a pawn in her game, and if I didn't act fast, I'd lose everything. I had to decide what to do next, confront her outright, or come up with a more calculated plan to get revenge. I was angry, hurt, and more determined than ever to take back some control. I wasn't going to let her ruin me without a fight. This was no longer just about cheating. It was about justice, and I was ready to get it. After I gathered all the evidence, I sat in my quiet study, staring at the photos and emails I'd collected. The truth hit me hard. Jessica had been orchestrating this entire scheme for months. She was not only cheating on me but actively sabotaging my business to help Mike, her industry contact, as she called him. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was actually a traitor, a liar, and a manipulator. The rage inside me simmered, but I knew I had to play this smart. Confronting her outright might escalate things or push her further into her lies. I needed a plan. That night, I stayed up late, planning my next move. I decided I'd confront her face to face, but on my terms. I wanted her to realize I knew everything. No more hiding, no more lies. I made sure to record our conversations, to have undeniable proof of her lies and her betrayal, in case she tried to deny or spin her way out of it. It was a sick feeling, knowing I had to spy on her, but I saw it as the only way to get the truth out in the open, once and for all. The next day, I waited until she got home from her girls' night. She was her usual bitchy self, acting annoyed that I was even there. I called her out immediately, showing her the photos I had, the emails, the evidence from the pie. Her face twisted into a mixture of shock, contempt, and anger. She tried to deny everything, of course, saying it was all a mistake, that I didn't understand her job, that Mike was just a business contact and nothing more. When I pressed her, her voice started to crack and she resorted to the usual lies. "You're just paranoid. You don't trust me and you're overreacting." She looked at me with that bitchy sneer, the kind of look that says she thinks she's in control. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew about the affair, about her helping Mike with insider info about their physical affair. That's when she finally lost it. She started screaming, calling me jealous, insecure, and an idiot for not trusting her. She argued that her industry networking was necessary for her career, that I was just an obstacle. She threw in some classic lines. "You're just jealous because I've got a better career than you. And you're so insecure, you think every man is out to get you." The worst part, she was still trying to lie her way out of it, like she thought I was some naive fool. I felt a mixture of anger and heartbreak. How could she keep lying, keep pretending that she was innocent? I saw through her bullshit, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I told her I was done, that I wanted a divorce. Her reaction was even more disgusting. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Whatever, you'll regret this," like she was so confident she could manipulate her way out of it. That's when I knew she was dangerous, that she wasn't just a cheating wife, but someone who would do anything to keep her secrets. In that moment, I decided I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I was done being the naive husband who believed in her lies. I knew I had to take control now to protect what was left of my dignity and my business. I started thinking about how to make her pay, how to use her own game against her. She thought she was so clever, so untouchable, but I was going to show her that I wasn't the fool she took me for. I had enough evidence, enough leverage to take her down, and I wouldn't stop until I did. The aftermath of that confrontation was a whirlwind. She stormed out, calling me every name in the book, threatening to ruin me, to destroy my reputation. But I was past caring about her empty threats. I knew this was just the beginning. I started contacting my lawyer, thinking about how to protect my assets, how to expose her to the right people. I realized that I'd been played, used, and betrayed in the worst way possible. But I also knew I had the power now, if I played my cards right. Jessica's lies were exposed, and I had to decide what kind of man I wanted to be moving forward, one who let her win or one who took control and fought back. The fallout from that confrontation was almost immediate. Jessica's usual bitchy smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of pure fury and disdain. She made her exit, slamming the door behind her like she thought that would somehow undo everything. But I wasn't going to let her run away that easily. I knew her well enough by now. She's the type to lash out, throw her tantrum, then try to spin everything in her favor. That's why I had already contacted my lawyer, and I was in the process of gathering everything I needed to protect myself and my assets. I wasn't naive enough to think that she'd just accept the truth and walk away quietly. No, Jessica was a bitchy, manipulative woman, and she'd do whatever it took to save her own ass. I knew she'd try to come back with some kind of story, some way to shift the blame onto me, or worse, try to manipulate the situation so she looked like the victim. That's why I made sure to keep all our conversations recorded, all the evidence collected, and every email and message saved. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me. Over the next few days, I watched her behavior shift from confrontational to downright hostile. She started calling and texting, trying to deny everything, claiming she was being framed, or that I was just jealous of her success. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her career and that she loved me, even as she was sleeping with her biggest industry rival. It was disgusting, but I stayed firm. I knew her tactics. She's a master at guilt and manipulation. I refused to let her get under my skin anymore. Meanwhile, I had begun to make some strategic moves of my own. I hired a private investigator to dig into her other contacts, to see if this was part of some bigger web of lies or if she had more secret meetings I didn't know about. The pie came back with some disturbing news. Jessica wasn't just sleeping with Mike. She was also meeting with several other industry insiders, exchanging confidential information, and maybe even selling company secrets. The extent of her betrayal was worse than I'd imagined. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively working against me in ways I couldn't even comprehend at first. It was at this point that I realized this wasn't just about a bit of cheating anymore. Jessica had crossed a line into treason, at least in my eyes. Her betrayal extended far beyond the bedroom. She was risking everything I'd built for her own personal gain. That's when I decided I needed to escalate my plans for revenge. I couldn't let her get away with it, not after everything. I started thinking about how I could use her own game against her, maybe leak some of her secrets, expose her to her clients, or even go public with everything. I wanted her to feel the loss, the fall from her high horse, the way she'd made me feel when I first found out. I also knew I had to be careful. Jessica was a bitchy, manipulative woman, and I couldn't trust her to play fair. She'd lie, spin stories, and do whatever she needed to save her own skin. That's why I kept my plans tight, stayed several steps ahead of her, and made sure I had all my bases covered. My goal was simple. I wanted her to see that her lies and betrayal would not go unpunished. I was hurt, furious, and ready to make her regret everything. If she thought she could cheat, lie, and manipulate her way into success, she was mistaken. I'd show her what real consequences looked like. The days that followed were a blur of preparations and mounting anger. I couldn't sleep much, constantly replaying everything she'd done and how betrayed I felt. Every time I thought I was close to a breaking point, I'd remind myself of what I was fighting for. Not just my reputation or my business, I was fighting to reclaim my dignity. Jessica had tried to destroy me, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I started drafting a plan to expose her. I had enough evidence now. The emails, the photos, the pie reports. I even hired a cybersecurity expert to help me leak some of her secrets to the right people, to her clients and her colleagues. I wanted her to understand that her game was over, that her lies, her deception, her physical affair with Mike, all of it would come crashing down. I knew she was the type to fight dirty, so I prepared myself for any backlash, any false accusations she might throw my way. But I was ready. I had the truth, and that was all I needed. One evening, I finally confronted her again. I called her and told her to meet me at the coffee shop downtown. I wanted her to see that. I wasn't afraid anymore, that I had taken control. When she arrived, she looked furious, like she thought she could still manipulate her way out of everything. I laid everything out piece by piece, showing her the evidence I'd gathered, reminding her of all the lies she'd told me, all the secrets she'd kept. Her face turned red with rage, and she started yelling, calling me crazy, jealous, and possessive. She screamed that I was ruining her career, that I'd never understand the importance of networking, and that she was doing this for us. But I didn't back down. I told her the truth about everything, about her affair, her involvement in corporate espionage, her betrayal of everything we'd built. I told her I knew she'd been helping Mike steal my secrets, and that I was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of woman she really was. Her bitchy attitude shifted into a panic. She tried to deny it all, but I had the evidence. I could see her slipping, losing her composure, realizing I had her cornered. That's when she broke down. She started crying, claiming she was sorry, saying it was all a mistake, that she loved me. But her tears felt hollow, rehearsed, like she was acting. I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her that I didn't want her to come back, that I was done playing her game. I warned her that if she kept messing around, I'd go public with everything, her affair, her corporate espionage, the whole dirty story. She looked at me with pure hatred, then stormed out, vowing she'd ruin me if it was the last thing she did. In the days that followed, I made good on my threat. I leaked some of her secrets to her biggest clients, exposing her involvement in the industry espionage and her affair with Mike. The fallout was swift and brutal. Clients started distancing themselves, rumors spread like wildfire, and her reputation took an irreversible hit. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. On one hand, I was finally taking back control. On the other, I was shattered that it had come to this. Jessica's lies had torn apart more than just our marriage. They'd almost destroyed my business, my life's work. But the worst part, seeing her go from confident, bitchy woman to a desperate, cornered rat. She called, texted, and even showed up at my office, begging, crying, trying to manipulate her way out of it, but I wasn't having any of it. I knew exactly what she was: manipulative, selfish, completely untrustworthy. I had been stupid to ever believe her, to think that love could cover up such a deep betrayal. Now I was left picking up the pieces, trying to move forward. I learned that some people are just poison, and trying to fix them is a waste of time. Sometimes you have to cut your losses and rebuild. I've got a long road ahead, but at least now I know what I'm dealing with. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated her. Jessica was a bitchy, manipulative woman who thought she could get away with anything: cheating, lying, sabotaging my work, and even playing me for a fool. She always had a sharp tongue, always thought she was the smartest person in the room. But I learned the hard way that her confidence was just a veneer. Beneath that, she was fragile, desperate, and willing to cross every line to save her own hide. Experience changed me. It's made me more cautious, more distrustful, but also more aware. I never wanted to be that naive guy again, the one who believed in fairy tales. Betrayal like this, it leaves scars, deep, ugly scars. But it also teaches you to be stronger, to stand your ground, and to fight for what's right. I've come to accept that some people are just toxic, and no matter how much you love them or want to fix things, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. Now I'm rebuilding not just my business but my sense of self. I don't see Jessica anymore. I don't even really think about her unless I'm reflecting on how far I've come. I've learned that revenge, in some ways, is about reclaiming your power. It's about realizing your worth and not letting someone else's lies and betrayal define you. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be, but I know I'm stronger for having gone through this. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts even if they scare you. People will betray you, sometimes in ways you never imagined. And when they do, don't hesitate to take control of the situation. Gather evidence, be strategic, and don't be afraid to fight back. Justice isn't always about legal action. Sometimes it's about exposing the truth and making sure the world knows what kind of person someone really is. Most importantly, don't stay stuck in the past. Forgive, yes, but only when you're ready. Learn from what happened, but don't let it define you. Build your life back, piece by piece, and remember that you're capable of more than you think. Betrayal hurts, but it also reveals who we really are. And honestly, I'm proud of how far I've come. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it control me. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful revenge is simply living your best life, free of lies and deception.